Hello Clemmygames fans, since you folks do love tactics games as well, here's my top 15 upcoming indie game picks in the genre, beginning with Transfinite Dungeon. This is an isometric pixel art roguelite tactics game where you manage a party of adventurers and delve into dungeons. This developer did reach out to me, and I immediately fell in love with the look, so if the meta roguelite systems are in place, this one may just be my next addiction.
Our beloved kingdom was not always the one we know today. I remember the days of peace. Families thrived, children played, and banquets were plentiful. The communities were kind, supportive, and sharing. The great invasion brought an end to the peace. Occupied with happiness, we forgot to learn how to defend ourselves. Led by General Adamance the Great, the vile Arcadian armies unfolded onto our coasts. Our army was crushed in a week. We were free citizens on the Monday and became slaves by the Sunday, serving foreigners we had never heard of. The Yuden dynasty was no more.
The very Fire Emblem-like Rise Atana has a darker, grittier tone and more RPG elements for individual characters. There are 14 available, a customization gem system, and a story where you fight against the evil empire. It looks to pay tribute to all the classics, and looks like it has a good shot of being excellent. EverTried is a roguelike tactics RPG, so procedural generation, permadeath and all that, but only has you controlling one character, facing off against enemies in turn-based battles. Of course, the pixel art is very striking, and the Kickstarter campaign does go in depth with the different mechanics, but this is already fully funded with some stretch goals to go. Mentioned this one a little while back, but Arcadian Atlas is still in development with no fixed release date. Although from what I hear, this developer seems to be ramping things up, so it looks like things are moving along nicely. This is very Final Fantasy Tactics-like in nature, with multiple characters, races and classes, with job evolution, branching paths, and the all-important tactics combat systems, which accounts for things like terrain, elevation, and such. Another one which I was suckered into by the look, the isometric pixel art game Live by the Sword Tactics impressed me with, funnily enough, the ability to rotate the map. Quite your standard high fantasy fare with both a story and a roguelite mode. The recently successfully kickstarted Dark Deity is also worth a mention, since this is very Fire Emblem-like in nature, and all the better since we could always use more games in the genre. Evidently, this goes back to the GBA roots with the pixel art, a nice departure from the 3D models in the modern FE games, and looks to be no less in-depth tactically. There's a 3-tiered class system, the familiar rock-paper-scissors type attack advantages, and even legendary Eternal Aspect weapons, but to be honest, I'm totally in just because of the pixel art. The Song of Fae has an interesting premise, since you play as a bard who is somehow mixed up in the affairs of the Fae Pantheon and the Fae Queen, and must master Wizard Chess, which is a turn-based tactics game inspired by modern chess. The art is on the simpler side, almost 1-bit in nature but with more colours, and while I'm not a fan of the world map, simple looking games can hide much more complex and in-depth mechanics, so I'm keeping an eye on this. If you want some anime in your tactics game, Reverse Collapse codename Bakery is one to wishlist, since this is set in a world that has essentially plunged into an ice age and how people try to survive. There are military conflicts between two organizations and a conspiracy surrounding the codename Bakery, so an intriguing setup, and I'm waiting to learn more. An open world entry, Tenderfoot Tactics looks pretty unique, since you are allowed to roam the world but do stumble into tactics battles. It has you playing as a party of goblins wielding elemental magic, trying to fight back a mysterious fog and the monsters that come along with it. It has a deterministic combat system, so no dice rolls, damage ranges or percentage chance to hit, and it releases in about 5 weeks or so one to check out. Together in Battle is an interesting mix of genres, since it is a tactics RPG by day and a social sim by night. So think Persona but with turn-based tactics rather than turn-based RPG, and you get the gist. Since this is not pixel art, I can't say that I'm a big fan of the look, with the textures and terrain looking a little strange to me, but props for trying something new.
Outnumbered and outgunned, mech commanders enlisted in the Phantom Brigade use an AI prototype to predict the future actions of the enemy and counter their every move on the battlefield.
Developer Brace Yourself Games of Crypt of the Necrodancer fame is really branching out, first with the city builder Industries of Titan, and next with Phantom Brigade.
Commanders begin in the planning phase. Here, real time is suspended, and commanders take as long as needed to plot their squad's actions using the timeline.
This is more Frozen Synapse-like in nature, in that while there is turn-based tactical planning of actions, this is resolved simultaneously, which is an interesting change.
And issue orders to counter enemy plans at precise moments. An action like an attack or shield brace can be placed in parallel with movement, but cannot overlap another. Once the plan is locked in, the execution phase begins and real-time resumes. It is here that commanders can see their plans unfold.
Also, physics will play a part into how the action plays out, with a nice variety of mechs, tanks and more to play with.
The unintended consequences. Commanders will need to adapt to these new outcomes at the start of the next sequence. There is much work to be done since the invasion. We must take back what is ours.
The very simply named Voxel Tactics is as advertised on the box, a turn-based tactics game that uses voxels as its art style. However, it does look surprisingly nice for such a generic sounding game, but another one which I'm waiting to see more of. The moment I saw Bangarro Tactics, it of course immediately drove my mind to Advance Wars, and looks like quite the classic indie story of a developer stepping in when the main franchise does not have any new entries. It looks quite classic in the combat screen, the ability to produce troops and even commanders in play, but unlike Wargroove, retains that military theme. One very neat looking tactics game from a small Polish developer is Shadow of the Road. set in feudal Japan, but there are enemies both magical and mechanical, which makes it interesting. Still quite a ways off with a projected 2022 release, but do at least give it a wish list for now. This one has long been on my watch list since the last spell is said to combine Diablo, Dynasty Warriors and tactical combat, and even has a roguelike twist to it. Protect the mages from hordes of monsters as they cast the last spell in a last-ditch effort to banish all magic from the world. This is all about skill, giving you the ability to slay hordes of enemies at a time, and there's even base building elements that does remind me a little bit of They Are Billions. Pixel art is on point and just looks like the perfect package, taking the #1 spot. To see more of the big picture, check out these awesome videos and I will see you after the jump.